Good morning, dear delegates. It gives me much pleasure to welcome you to Jo-Burg for the second ethics study. I should have been here this morning with you, but unfortunately, due to issues beyond my control, I can only join you tomorrow. But I want to assure you that we have put in place systems to ensure your comfort during this day, because I'm definitely joining you tomorrow. Delegates, we are in Africa, and South Africa reminds us of several conflicts of several ethnic groups. Descendants from Northern Africa, minority whites from Europe, Netherlands and Britain, the colored from these groups, including Indian South Africans, Chinese South Africans, and even slaves from Madagascar. South Africa was under the official system of racial discrimination or segregation by a white minority from 1948 up till 1994, when the African National Congress came to dominate the national South African politics. South Africa's experience, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, helps us take good stock of experiences of human interaction. Where have we been? Where are we going? Yet, at the center of this particular journey is the quest for the creation of sustainable wealth. Wealth that is enough for today's needs, as well as wealth that will not jeopardize the chances of tomorrow's child. The global future, as you're aware, is threatened by large and unsustainable imbalances. Of course, despite recent significant progress in promoting good governance. There are unsustainable high levels of debt, unemployment, inequality, environmental degradation, just to mention but a few. All these, perhaps, may be preventable if we prevail to our moral compass. Appealing to the moral compass, ladies and gentlemen, means an engaged global process. An engaged process of thoughtful leadership, enterprise, fair dealing, quality, integrity, modesty, responsibility, and accountability. And as I talk about modesty, it reminds me of one Warren Buffett, a renowned entrepreneur who I'm sure most of you know about, based in Cleveland, Ohio in the US, who says, be careful about what you buy, because if you buy what you do not need, you may have to sell what you need. So that is the definition of modesty. Our institute, the Ethics and Integrity Institute, seeks to contribute to shaping business principles that can permit our organizations and our companies to deliver responsibly and sustain growth in a world of several civilizations. The Institute seeks to add its voice towards aligning objectives of international community and the business world. These objectives largely remain building our markets for continuous business development, and so we need to attract several investors into our nations. Investors will only come where there is good governance and ethical practice, because they want to be assured that their investments will not be misappropriated or misused. Combating corruption. Corruption is a cancer in our society, both in the elite societies and even in the developing world. How do we ensure that corruption does not eat into our children tomorrow? Safeguarding the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, the environment provides life for us. Environmental degradation is a serious and unsustainable support structure for our development. Ensuring social development, and perhaps this is where ethical practice cuts across. How do we ensure that we are just to every other single element that we deal with? The annual ethics study is an opportunity for all of us to benchmark with what is happening in this part of the world, to network, to debate, to discuss what the future holds for us and how we can make tomorrow a better tomorrow than today. Feel free, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, to share your experiences, your thoughts, and add your voice to the global discourse on responsible business or moral capitalism, as is often referred to by the Core Round Table. Last year's study, which was held here in Jo-Burg from the 24th to the 30th of November 2012, focused on the kind of structures that are in place for managing ethics and integrity, right from international level, national level, and even at the organization. During this year's study, ladies and gentlemen, we will delve on tools and instruments of promoting integrity and transparency, and hence our theme, prevention is better than prosecution. On our third day of the study, we will be visiting the Public Protector's Office in South Africa to learn about how they are helping the South African society, the South African government, in terms of enhancing integrity and promoting transparency. The global principle of sustainable development, that is post-millennium development goals, is taken into account during this study's deliberations. The MDGs made the reduction of extreme poverty the primary target for global development, of course with additional goals of social and environmental development. The work remains largely unfinished despite substantial progress. The annual study is our institute's contribution to what then must be done. How do we fully capture the proven capacity of fair creation of wealth, promotion of true justice, and sustainable development that is now a global principle? I must hasten to remind you that sustainable development is one of our national values in our Constitution, as articulated by Article 10, Chapter 2 of the Kenyan Constitution. The Institute has picked on 4 thematic areas to make its contribution to the ethical conduct in our business. The first one is enhancing efficiency, and the contribution we make is how do we become efficient within our operations? How do we use less to create more without jeopardizing the quality? The second is inculcating ethical culture. How do we get those we collaborate with, those we work with, those we deliver service to, those we do business with, to think of doing the right thing as a social contract and go beyond just compliance? The third is the question of reward. How do we reward moral exemplars? How do we identify those who have consistently complied with a moral code and celebrate them as a way of encouraging ethical conduct? I want to remind you of our late Professor Wangari Maathai. For a very long time, many Kenyans misplaced her vision for environment. In fact, as I was growing up, I probably thought she was a mad woman when she carried the other women to Uhuru Park to protest. Little did I know that environment is really our life. When she died, the world reminded us that she was a moral exemplar and she needed to be celebrated, and perhaps the need for us to do a state funeral. But what strikes us is other people identified this moral exemplar before we did. We are here in South Africa, and we all know that the apartheid icon, that is Nelson Mandela, who was the first black president, he's still alive with difficult health problems. But South Africans have been in a mourning mood before, of course, the icon graduates to another level. That shows us that he has touched lives. How do we identify those who have touched lives and celebrate them? Fourthly is the question of sanctions. How do we, in our organizations, in our families, in our societies, firmly, consistently, and without any fear or favor, apply justice? A research was conducted in Kenya not long ago, about last year, by one of the Kenyan scholars to find out how we can mainstream alternative justice mechanism within the judicial system in Kenya. Interestingly, when they went to two places in Kenya, that is the coastal region and the eastern region, which is the Meru region, 85% of the people in Meru told the researcher that they would opt to go to the Njuri Ncheke for their justice resolution as opposed to going to mainstream justice system. They also stated that they perceive those who want to go through the court process as those who want to go and bribe and not seek justice. Now this tells us we are still way below achieving real justice for our countries. And so even within our organizations and our families, we need to advocate for fair application of justice. As a matter of fact, those who are Christians like me know that the Bible says you can be forgiven, but you must bear your responsibility, and hence you must still bear the consequences. Next year's 2014 ethics study is scheduled for Malaysia from the 23rd to the 29th of November 2014. We will hopefully interact with the Institute of Directors in Malaysia to understand their unique corruption prevention mechanism, which is titled Corruption Prevention Action Pact. Malaysia's Code of Good Governance is well celebrated globally, and it is something that we in other parts of the world should emulate, and hence our choice for Malaysia next year. I encourage you, upon leaving this particular second ethics study, to assume the role of advocates in order to bring to the attention of your friends, colleagues, family, and many others the ideas, the initiatives that have been discussed in this particular second study. Let us act as ambassadors for this very important subject. We thank you for your support. We are indebted to each one of you, to your organizations, for your valued support. At this stage, dear delegates, allow me to give you a brief account of the institute that is mounting this particular study. The Ethics and Integrity Institute was registered in February 2012 as a non-profit organization under the Companies Act as a company limited by guarantee. Our vision is to inculcate morally responsible conduct in our society, and our society is defined as Kenyan society, East African society, and even global society. The Institute is engaged in activities aimed at the social engineering process to transform our moral fabric. What we are basically saying is we do a lot of preaching to see how we can imprint moral values within our society. At the governance level, we have a General Assembly of those men and women who thought it worthy to register this particular institute. We do have a board of directors, 5 of them, and we have an executive team comprising of 7. The 4th constituency is our honorable consultants, associate consultants, some of whom you will interact with in the course of this particular second study. The background to setting up the institute, ladies and gentlemen, is in 2010, as some of us went through their ethics officer certification program, mounted by the Ethics Institute of South Africa. The South African Institute conducted a study in Kenya to find out what organizations were doing to promote ethical conduct. And the results were quite interesting. It was a limited study, not many organizations were involved, but both private and public were included. Organizations did state that they are aware of the importance of managing ethics within the organization. They also did state that they have a code of conduct, and this is what they equated to managing ethics. When we ask them what happens, what do you do? Say we have a code of conduct, we are reminded, it is circulated, when something happens, we are told about it. So it is more or less a reactive process. When we ask them who is responsible for managing ethics, they did state that different people, the HR, the human resource manager or director, the permanent secretary, the CEO. So from one organization, we got varied responses, which in our view then indicated that most of our organizations still do not have the structures and the capacity to implement ethics programs. When we did ask them, who do you rely on for advisory services or for training services in this area? All of them mentioned the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, but one of the other things they stated is that the commission appears to be overwhelmed, and sincerely, with a staff force of about 300, it is impossible to cater for the entire needs of public and private sector, although it's a public organization. Some of the other issues that came out in terms of which are the areas that an organization needs to look into, or some of the needs of the respondents, they did state that they wanted to learn more about organizational governance. They wanted to learn more about developing and implementing the ethics code, about corruption prevention guidelines and policies, about organizational risk analysis, about ethics awareness training, about strategic review or audit of their ethics programs, and about due diligence or integrity testing during times of employment. That is just but a few. We as an institute are engaged in research to establish the ethicality of organizations and to assist them strengthen their systems or put in place requisite structures. We also advocate for good practice in the media and elsewhere. We provide advisory services. We are in the process of setting up individual and corporate membership, which I'll talk about a little later. And we, in the past almost 2 years, have been involved in numerous training for our organizations. Just to mention some of our successes as Ethics and Integrity Institute, we have been able to train close to 232 officers, mainly from public sector. We have been able to run 18 in-house and open programs. Number of companies we've interacted with are 52. We've been able to mount this ethics study. The first one, as you can see, are delegates who attended last year's ethics study. We are in very close work relationship with the core roundtable, who is coming on board as a partner in one of our programs. We were able to launch our ethics workbook, which is in your study material on the 5th of December, officiated by one of the ministers then. The upcoming partnership, we are just about to sign a collaboration agreement with Management University of Africa, again on the certification program. And this is part of our synergizing and quality control to make sure that we are able to deliver what the market deserves. So Management University will come in with their research and academic strength in the areas that we are involved in. The benefits to you, ladies and gentlemen, of some of these programs that we conduct is we create awareness amongst your employees. Sometimes we blame people, but I have come to discover that there's no waste in education. Even as you sit here, you will discover things that you have learned, but surely you must come out with one that you have never heard about before. Another benefit is that we inspire value-based conduct. We benchmark with others, such as during this study. We are forming an ethics network, and hopefully you should be part of that. And I said, through our certification program, we will put together a community of integrity officers who can now regulate this particular profession. I had earlier talked about our thematic areas: ethical culture, rewarding exemplary ethical conduct, and of course, advocating for sanctions. What matters really, dear delegates, is how we look at ourselves. Do we see our real self, or do we see our ideal self? Our real self may not be as important as our ideal self. And so as we go through this study, it is a self-reflection exercise to ask yourself, where am I in terms of ethical practice, and where do I want to go? And ask yourself, where is my organization positioned? Where is my organization position? Organization, where should my, but above all, organization, our entire Kenyan society, and even our entire Kenyan society, global society. So we really need a self-reflection. So we really need this self-reflection during this particular. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, that we will manage our time well and cover all the sessions that we need to cover. So time management is of essence. I will be joining you tomorrow, but today we have our able course coordinator here. I hope we shall also manage our mobile phones. Thank God we are not back in our country where we must respond to those calls. Keep them on, but on the silent mode so that none of us is interrupted. Again, we are in a foreign country in Jo-Burg, which has had a history of insecurity. But post the Olympics, we are informed and we are assured that security in Jo-Burg has improved. But all the same, I want to advise you to be very streetwise. Don't walk alone on the streets as much as possible. Be twos, but be streetwise, because we still have those kind of elements within our midst. Your neighbor is your responsibility. As you sit here today, please ensure that you know your neighbor very well and you account for their presence and their absence. I want to now ask you to please appoint a class rep or a chief whip who will coordinate between us and yourselves to help us manage the study, and so that we run our program smoothly. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that if you want to go fast, then you need to go alone. But if you want to go far, then you need to take others along. And hence the reason why we are engaging you. I also want to remind you that not all things that count get counted, and not all things that get counted count. Allow me once more to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, as you reflect on those conclusions. And allow me at this point to hand you over to our speaker this morning, who is Professor Joshua Ndambisia, to take over this particular morning session and run with you till lunchtime. Professor was with us during the first ethics study, and we appreciate his knowledge and wealth of experience. He has a medical background, but with a lot of interest in this particular area on ethics, and I'm sure he will share his experiences with you. His first session will basically be the status of Africa, and also discuss with you ethics and sustainable development. You will be able to reflect our status as Africa and where we need to go. This is not to paint a grim picture about Africa, but only to challenge ourselves to start having a real self-inflection of where we ought to be as Africans and also as global citizens, because our boundaries really have become irrelevant. So thank you very much. I want to really wish you fruitful deliberations. I will take you through the rest of the program tomorrow as we do our recap. This afternoon you have the opportunity to go ahead and see Jo-Burg, visit Eastgate Mall, but we shall cover that particular session when I come, because that was basically my session. When I come tomorrow, we shall see how to cover that particular session. Otherwise, I want to say thank you very much. Welcome to Jo-Burg, and please, let's share your deliberations. Let's share your thoughts. It's a learning experience. We also have the opportunity to learn from you what you know and what you have done. So all said and done, I want to say asanteni sana, thank you very much, and enjoy your day today. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.